Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to answer one of the most common questions I get, and that is, what the heck does it mean to press a tincture? On my channel, I do get a lot of questions, and I do my best to answer all the questions as quickly as possible, and of course as efficiently and accurately as I can within the rules so I don't get in trouble. I'm going to do another video about that at some point. But the two most common questions I get, number one is, why do I pronounce the H in herbs? And I have a video for that, so you should check it out because there is actually a reason. But the next question I get all the time is, what does it mean to press a tincture? And sometimes as a herbalist, I forget that I'm using lingo that maybe isn't commonplace or something that you guys have heard of. So I'm actually going to be pressing my holy basil tincture today. I was gifted these beautiful plants from a friend, and I was able to make my own holy basil tincture this year. And I've been finding it really, really great for me as an adaptogen. So I'm ready to press it. And I thought, okay, this is the perfect time to finally explain what it means. And it's nothing fancy, guys. It just simply talks about straining tinctures. So when I make a tincture, okay, I don't press them, i.e. I do not remove the herb material from the tincture until I'm ready to use it. So I will have jars sitting for years on the shelves because they store better this way. That's what I was taught. I don't open the lid. I don't mess with it. It stays in my cupboard, not exposed to light or heat. It's in a cool, dark area, and therefore they're not oxidizing. The minute you remove this lid and press your tincture or strain the herb material out, you've now exposed your tincture to both light and oxygen, which is going to start the oxidation process. So once I press a tincture, I try to use it up within a year. So if I don't need that tincture yet, for example, I already have, say, peppermint tincture in clinic ready to use, why am I going to press another bottle? I would rather have it sit and make sure it's got a really nice long shelf life. It's also the reason why, even though I go through liters and liters and liters of certain herbs, I only make 500 ml jars because I don't want to press a gigantic 1 liter jar of this because, again, I'm trying to use it up within a year. So I hope that makes sense as kind of a rule of thumb. So when you're thinking about how much tincture your family is going to go through of a certain plant, I want you to think about jar size in that regard. Because if you're only going to use, say, 250 milliliters a year, I would rather have you make 4 250 milliliter jars and leave those other 3 sitting in your apothecary shelf in a cool, dark location, not oxidizing, and sitting there nice and happy until you're ready to use them, than to make an entire liter and then have all that tincture. Because every time when I press them, I put them into amber glass bottles from there. And every time I make a tincture for a client, I'm opening this lid and I'm pouring tincture out, and it is now being exposed to even more oxygen, right? Which is why the shelf life of it goes down. So I want you to think about that when you're making your tinctures. 1 liter jars, even for someone like me who runs a clinical practice, is not practical. I would rather make a bunch of 500 ml jars. So again, pressing a tincture is just a fancy pants way of saying that you're going to strain the herb material out, leaving you with the infused alcohol, which is what a tincture is. In this case, the alcohol is the medium by which we extract medicines, right? If you make a tea, the medium is water. If you make an oil infusion, the medium is oil. So there are a few ways that you can do this, and I encourage you to check out, I have a video, I did it a few years ago, about like some of the supplies I think that you should really have in your apothecary kitchen if you're going to get into medicine making, and they're not expensive, but in the long run, it's going to make your medicine making process more efficient. So you really could just use a strainer like this. The downside with using something like this is it's not very efficient. And what I mean by that is you're going to lose a lot of alcohol in the process. So when we say press, that's actually what we mean. We're straining, yes, but we're actually trying to squeeze as much of that end product out of our medicine as possible. Because let's be honest, you went through all that effort of making the tincture, and alcohol is expensive. So let's not waste it. So you can go and buy tincture presses. There's a few available on Etsy as an example. And there is one from Strictly Medicinals. That's a big boy. It's very expensive, worth it. It's a hydraulic tincture press. And as soon as the Canadian dollar doesn't suck compared to the American dollar, I plan on purchasing it. But my favorite tool, and I mentioned it in that video with the supplies I think you should buy, is my potato ricer. It kind of looks like a giant garlic press, doesn't it? Right? It's got these holes. So you will have to do a secondary strain, okay? Because a lot of herb bits are going to get through here. But this allows me to squeeze out a whole heck of a lot of tincture and product when I use it. And so if you've ever seen these in kitchen stores and you're like, what is that for? I think it's for making gnocchi, right? Like like mashed potatoes, right? You put a potato in and you smush it. But I've been using this one for close to 17 years now. It's still in great shape. Make the investment, please buy a stainless steel one. Do not go to Dollarama or your local dollar store, because the minute you put pressure on this to strain out herbs, especially things like berries, roots, twigs, bark, you're gonna break the sucker. So you might as well invest in a good quality stainless steel one. But like I said, I've been using this one for a very long time. I got it at a kitchen store, and this is what I use to press my tinctures. So I'm gonna stop talking. I'm gonna give the camera to my son, and he's actually gonna film me pressing my holy basil tincture so you guys can see firsthand what I'm talking about and how I do this. All right, so when I'm pressing tinctures, I want to work efficiently, because the minute I crack open this jar, it's now being exposed to oxygen. And so I'm not gonna stop partway through. So I like to work with really big measuring cups. I have a secondary strainer that I will use afterwards, but I'll show you guys, and a funnel, and then somewhere to put my spent herb material. So I'm just gonna open the lid and get to work. And you'll see right away, and maybe kiddo, you can zoom in for them. Like, this does not do a good job of catching the herb material. That is not the point of using the potato ricer. The point is this. Look at that. Look how much. Now you can use cheesecloth. I know lots of herbalists are like, I'll just squeeze with my hands and use cheesecloth. But you know what? I get way more end product when I do this. Whoa. I'm actually spraying across the kitchen. Did I get you? Oh, not. He's shaking his head no. I get way more end product this way. And you know what? If you've got arthritis or, not a lot of hand strength, it's helpful to use a tool. Right, so that's my first round. From here, let's see. Hey kiddo, can you zoom in? Hopefully it doesn't get too blurry. Like, look how flat that is, right? It's almost like a pancake. It's pressed all the herb material out. And now I like to use a knife, and I just scrape in here. And like, it's mostly dry. Ooh, I'm making a lot of noise here. But if I show it to you, like, it's quite dry, right? I've been able to press out quite a bit of the moisture from this. So from here, I usually pour a little bit of liquid back into the jar, just to make it easier to pour it out. And then I try to get the rest of the herbs out. Can you zoom in so they can see? My goal, ideally, is a fairly clean jar. I've gotten most of the herbs out. It smells so good. Love holy basil. And then I'll give it another really quick press, squeezing out the rest of that alcohol as much as I can. So that's the difference between straining and pressing. You literally are pressing out as much of that alcohol, that tincture, as possible. I'm gonna set this aside because, again, I'm trying to work efficiently. Make sure there isn't any liquid left in there. And then from here, I have my amber bottles. This helps prevent some oxidation as well. So that dark glass prevents light from being exposed to your tincture. And then of course, where I store it is in a cupboard where it's even darker. And so I'll use my funnel, my really fine mesh strainer. You can often get these from tea shops. They're easy to find there usually, because you really want it to be super fine. I hope that catches up on camera, but really, really fine. And then from here, I'm just gonna pour. So this will catch any of those last little herb bits out. And I'm done. So I'm not sure if this will show up on the camera, but the yield is actually quite amazing if you think about it. That was a 500 milliliter jar. This is a 500 milliliter bottle, and I was able to get probably close to 450 milliliters. If I was pressing or squeezing by hand, I guarantee you this would be closer to 400 or even less. I just want to say a big thank you to my son for being an awesome camera person. My normal camera guy is not here today, so he was filling in and he did a great job. Now, if you've made it this far and you're like, what the heck is a tincture and why do I want to do all of this? Make sure you snag my free tincture guide. It is in the description below, and it goes through my process, how I make tinctures, all the different ratios, all the things that you need. Plus it's free, so why wouldn't you do that? From there, from like the pressing part, I would then normally just take the label off of the mason jar that I use to make it and slap it on here. If I'm really organized, I'll actually cross this date out and put the date that I pressed it, so that way I know to use it up within a year. I used to be really diligent about that, but now I go through so much tincture with clinic that I don't find I need to do that, but it might be a good practice for you. And then of course, storing in a cool, dark location. You can, I know I'm gonna get this question. Yes, you can just put it right back into the mason jar. The reason why I invested in these is because they're easier to pour from. What I was finding when I was trying to pour from the mason jar, because I use a graduated cylinder when I'm formulating for clients, and I was just spilling stuff everywhere, and this is a lot easier to pour from. So for me, it was worth the investment. I get these, I'm in Canada, I get these from Voyager Soap and Candle. They sometimes have them, sometimes they don't. There's been weird glass shortages the last few years, but what you want are narrow mouth amber bottles. Yeah, and that might be worth the investment for you as well, but you can totally just pour it right back into the mason jar. Just make sure you're storing it in a cool, dark location again. Now, if you've got any questions, please drop those below. Don't forget to snag your free tincture guide. And until next time, this is Corinne from Inspire Your Herbs, wishing you health and wellness.